Well, Kara kind of said this already, but huge thanks for coming. This means a lot. And also thanks for Algorithm, Coffee, and Runaway for having us. But so first, how many of you are readers of The Hustle? Woo! Wonderful. Okay, so I don't exactly need to explain what we are. And if you don't know, you can ask someone else that just raised their hand. But my name is Parr. I'm one of the founders, and I'm the CEO of The Hustle. And we make it really easy to be smart, and we give you all the business and news and information you need each day. And when we started this company we started it 2 years ago, but we kind of changed to what we are now about 18 months ago. And when we started, the idea was to create a media company. And me or my co-founder John, we had no idea about media. So our experience in this game is probably as long as the company existed. But we somehow were able to make it work. At times it felt like despite ourselves, or in spite of our lack of knowledge. And when we did this, we had tons of people, particularly in Silicon Valley, who came up to us and they said, how are you able to get traffic? How are you able to get people to come to your website? How are you able to get people to care about the content that you're creating? Because in Silicon Valley in particular, it's a very engineering-heavy culture. It's a very product-driven culture. And content, while there is a lot of process that goes into it, it can also be a little bit nebulous and hard to understand for particular types of people. And so people were always asking us these questions. And so we had the idea of what if we got a couple other people who were able to build businesses that are actually far bigger than where The Hustle is now, and we can get them to talk about how they've been able to use content marketing to grow their company. And so that's why this event, that's why we decided to do it. And so today what we're going to talk about is how these folks have been able to use content to grow their business to they're all quite large, so we could say hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue probably. I'll try to lead the conversation and we can talk about, I'll ask some questions about their team and their structure and the process for creating this. But really what I want this to be is just a controlled conversation with about 150 people. So we'll try to make it work. But so before we get into all that, I would love to ask you about just a general idea so these guys know who everyone is. So how many of you are not from how many of you are not from the Bay Area? Raise your hand. Wow, cool. And how many of you have a content marketing role at your company? Okay. How many of you work for yourself, whether you are alone, a freelancer, or own a company? Great. How many of you have no idea what you're talking about when it comes to content marketing? Okay. How many of you have a middle idea of what you're talking about? And how many of you are very talented, but you just are here to learn even more? Okay, a few people. Okay. Hopefully that helps. And so, as we talk throughout this time, we've got about an hour, about 50 minutes. If you have questions, raise your hand as we go. We won't have a specific Q&A period, but I'd like to make it a feel-free conversation. And so I'll lead the talk a little bit, but if you have questions, just let us know. So first, I would love to hear if you guys can tell us a little bit about who you are, and we'll take about 20 seconds for you to tell us who you are and why people should listen to you. Take us home.
Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah. Good morning, everybody. I'm Lindsay Logan, and I'm here with Greer. We are a writing assistant that helps ensure everything you type is clear, mistake-free, and impactful. I'm our head of content marketing, which means I lead our team that is responsible for content strategy, our editorial roadmap, and all things content production and distribution. We see millions of blog visitors each month and have built up a pretty robust Facebook community of 7 million followers.
And I don't know if he's the CEO, but he's the founder of Max, spoke at HustleCon, and he didn't tell me any secret numbers or anything, but I think you guys have grown your business Grammarly, I think bootstrapped it to, I don't know the exact number, but I think it was north of 100 million in revenue, or close.
Yeah, we're not at this time really talking about revenue numbers, but you're correct that we did bootstrap the company up until this most recent round of funding, which was a couple months ago.
Wonderful. And how about you, Dave?
All right. Good morning.
Hello.
Kind of working? Yes. Hello. One more time. Hello.
Hello. Good morning. How's it going? You guys look good. It's like super early. I thought there would maybe be 10 people here. I'm not used to waking up quite this early and like looking as good as all of you guys do. So my name is Greer. I work for InVision, the world's leading design, prototyping, and collaboration platform. Prior to that, I led content marketing at Shutterstock, the stock photography company. And prior to that, I worked for a company some of you may know, some of you have done video work. It's called PremiumGeek.com, production music, stock music site that was acquired by Shutterstock in 2015. And so I lead the InVision content marketing team, which consists of social, our really active blog. We have a multi-million visitors, or subscribers, I should say, to our content newsletter every week. Social media, I say video, we've got a couple of video folks on our content team. And we're like a pretty small, scrappy team there's 10 of us out of 400 people at InVision. So yeah, that's my quick bio.
Hey everybody, thanks for coming out this early. I'm Maggie, Leung, from NerdWallet, which handles personal finance and help people make decisions with clarity and confidence. So we basically take mumbo jumbo and bullshit that people spew out from financial institutions, and we try to clarify what you're actually making a decision on and how to make it so that it fits you best. And so I joined about 4 years ago when NerdWallet was about 40 people. I joined when there was no content team, and I built the content team till now, from 0 to 100, and we're about 400 some people company-wide. We are above 100 million in revenue every year, and we bootstrapped in the first 5 years. So we took the funding eventually because it was friggin' hard to prove that we were profitable and actually a good business without somebody else socially validating us. So we took money so we could confirm that we were good.
It was like a $90 million TechCrunch article. Is pretty much. You would think a content company would know how to figure that out, right? So Maggie, I'm very familiar with NerdWallet's business because I'm friends with you and a bunch of the people who work with you. But I find what your path to be incredibly interesting because you were in the traditional media world and then decided to come to NerdWallet, which some people don't like the word content marketing, but I'll use that because it kind of does describe what your role was. But can you explain some of the surprising things you learned? And first, tell people what your background was, because I find it to be incredibly interesting. But can you explain what the difference was between working in media, where you make money from advertising and make money from traffic, and then going to NerdWallet, where you do content marketing and you make money not from advertising, which I imagine most people are in that boat. Is anyone in media, or is everyone in they make money in other ways than content? One person. So most people are not. Okay, so two. So can you explain what you've learned through that process and what's been surprising about that?
Yeah, so when I was working previously in my first career, I was in traditional media, like Sam says. So I used to work in newspapers originally, and then I transitioned. So I spent 20 years total, roughly, in newspapers, mainstream newspapers, and then network. So I basically went from local media and places like the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal to places like CNN. And the reason why I decided to go to CNN after working in newspapers was the business model was crumbling. Advertising, generally not that great a model for content from what we found. It just depends on what kind of content. And so when I decided to leave, I was initially facing a choice. They wanted to give me a promotion at CNN, and I thought, well, what's the best case scenario? What's the worst case scenario? And I analyzed the risks, and I thought, well, even if I crush it, there's a cap considering what supply and demand is for the skill set that we have and for just the business model in general. So I thought, okay, I'll look around the world and see where my skill set is most valued and most useful. And I did about 4 months of research just learning other industries. And at one point I came across NerdWallet, and I passed it several times. I was just reading up on companies and they had ads out, and I was like passing it up because I never heard of it. And then finally I was like, what the fuck is NerdWallet? If it had a normal name, I probably would have never stopped. And that's how I initially discovered it. And then when I came here, I thought, well, basically I have to relearn everything or unlearn some things. And so I spent a lot of time just like observing and thinking about the business rather than doing anything.
And
Like,
what were some of the differences in the way a content marketing team was run versus a traditional media team?
So back to some of the questions you asked about the model difference. And when I was in traditional journalism, all I had to do was basically make content that would inform, entertain, or somehow get people to click back in some other compelling reason. You know, to spend time on the site was super important to us because of advertising. The more page views, the more advertising that we can display. It didn't actually matter quality-wise, depending on your audience. It just depended on whether they were engaged long enough to show advertisers that they could reach people. So that's really different. We didn't have to drive people to conversions. We didn't have to help them form any kind of opinion. All we had to do was what was newsworthy. So when I came here, that's why, when I came to NerdWallet, that's why I took time to understand what the business challenges were, because I knew that I wanted to go someplace where content actually helped drive the business. And I didn't actually know how to do that other than the traditional newsroom way. And I knew I had to relearn that.
And one thing that I know you've done, and Danny, you guys are fully distributed, so you have probably also interesting ways of solving this challenge. But one thing, particularly in this area, is that it's been really, really hard for at least us, and I imagine you guys face it too. It's been really challenging to hire people who are great at content marketing or who might actually understand it. And so, has anyone else faced that out here where it's been really hard to actually meet people who understand what they're talking about and hire them? It's like a huge challenge. I know we were talking about it earlier, where it's really, really hard to hire people. And Danny, I know that you are remote, so you might have a different way of solving this, but I'd love to hear what everyone's opinion is. But so, and Maggie, I know your story about this. I'm sure you have interesting insights. But what's some of the ways in which you guys have built up some of these content marketing teams? And did it start with you coming up with a strategy, or did it start with you guys coming up with like a business objective and then looking for smart people who could help accomplish that? Like, how? And what was the hiring process like?
I'll take a stab at it.
Yeah.
So I gave my first kind of foray into tech was a company called Premium Beat, as I mentioned, and we were 100% bootstrapped. I was kind of employee number one, not the founder, but I came in as the first employee. And back in the early days, it was like we were generating a lot of traffic over our blog, and I was writing 2 blog posts a day personally, like on top of a lot of other things, but that was like a huge traffic driver for us. And after a while, we started hiring more people, and it's like, shit, this isn't sustainable for me just to be writing 2 posts every single day and have them be high quality. So, I think the biggest thing is what our looking at who your customer is, who you're talking to. So our biggest customer was video editors for Premium Beat, selling production music, stock music. So I went out, I was like, I need to build a content team fast, because this is totally unsustainable. So I went out and started talking to some writers, and what we found like really quickly was that if folks, especially something like video production, or now I'm with InVision, where digital product design, if someone's writing about that who doesn't know about that, doesn't breathe that, doesn't live that, isn't like inside their DNA, there's like a huge bullshit factor with our audience where it's like almost counterproductive to even putting content out. Like they can sniff out that like, this isn't legit. So that's why I tried in the beginning some content, I don't want to use the controversial term like content farms, but we tried some of these companies that were like, just writers that one day they read about car parts and now we're asking.
And you pay like $100 an article.
$100 an article. And then
Wait, has anyone ever done that, by the way? Like found one of these sites?
I mean, there's a lot of people, it's a huge opportunity, I know, especially out here where, there's a lot of companies making a lot of money. I would argue in almost a predatory way. Sometimes they go into like startups who want to get a content marketing strategy and they're like, here, content marketing in a box, like we'll do it for you. And I realized really early, this isn't gonna work. It's not gonna work for our audience. So I went after, instead of going after writers, I just went after folks that were video editors and video producers and said, hey, look, you wanna make, and some of these folks I found online, they had Twitter presence, they already had a built-in audience that we could leverage to expand the reach of the content. They said, hey, do you wanna come write for us? We'll pay you $150, $250, whatever it was, $300 an article, and then they would start doing that, and then the impetus was on me to go through and clean it up to make sure that it it read right. I mean, these quotes were not right. I can always clean up writing. I can't make someone, like, it's impossible for me to teach like a love of video production or product design and an understanding of that to someone. I can always clean up their writing and edit it. So that was kind of how we built the team. And I know with Premium Beat, we had when I left a while back, we had a team, I think, of about 25 active contractors. And with InVision as well, like 70% of the content that we publish on our blog comes from outside contributors. And so we probably have north of like 100 folks that contribute on a semi-regular basis that are all active product designers in the space, working full-time as product designers and videos on the side.
So then the idea was to find experts in teaching not writers first, but experts.
Experts first, yeah, and I'm not even interested in teaching them how to write. Like what I found early on that, this back in one time stuff, I feel like for content marketing is this like approval thing, and I know, the sending back and forth, can you change this, can you change that? I found it to be a lot more beneficial for me to just change the writing and do the editing and put it out. For folks that we developed like long-standing relationships with that were contributing on a regular basis, I'd send little tips back like, hey, in the future, can you do this, can you do that? Which would help, but a lot of times it was just easier for me or eventually we hired an editor to fix things up and put it out. So I wasn't some people are inherently really good writers and some people aren't, but if their understanding of what they're talking about was paramount to any of the technicalities of writing, we could handle that on our end.
How about you, Lindsay? What was how were you able to find people who understood what they were talking about, and additionally, the structure of your guys' team?
Yeah, so I think for us, the way we have kind of built the team is we have people who are really, I think you made a great point about really knowing your customer, and I think for us, what that has looked like is finding people who are really curious, by nature, and really want to invest in testing and learning and figuring out how to talk to that audience and that customer. And so I think some kind of understanding or some connection to marketing or content creation has been really helpful, but I think our secret sauce has really been this kind of curiosity and desire to learn about the customer and to really figure out how to do that successfully. So for us, we have kept most of the content strategy in-house. So we have a pretty small team, including me, we have six people. And so we've kept the strategy in-house and we've outsourced a lot of the writing. And once we have found good writers, we hang on to them for dear life, because it is hard to find those people who are really talented writers. You can come to know what to expect from them, to count on them. And so we've really invested in building those writer relationships, helping them understand our goals, what we're trying to achieve, almost treating them like an extended part of the team. That's really helped us with scaling our content engine.
And in terms of, you were talking about finding great people, so at The Hustle, what we do is, so we usually will write a blog post and then put a job ad in our email, and we'll get a whole lot of applicants, and then we do a phone screen for the people who we think have a lot of potential. And then something that Maggie told us to do is we have like an assignment that we send them where they will write an email in our voice, and then from there we do in-person interviews. What are your guys' process for hiring? Because until Maggie, you kind of told me how that was possible, I had no idea what to do when it came to hiring. At one point we're like, oh, this person graduated from Columbia Journalism School, they're good. And it sucked. It's not good. Like, I was like, oh, Columbia, where does that rank in terms of like the ranking, USA Today's ranking system? And oh, they have to be good. That totally was not the case. And then the best writers we have don't have a background at all, but they're just talented and smart. So can you guys each tell me about, we'll start with you, Maggie, what your hiring process is for finding and vetting and then even onboarding these people?
Yeah, I think that you really have to start with your business and what you're trying to accomplish. So for what we do, it's different from maybe what you guys do. So just focus on this one example. We're trying to help people make complex financial decisions, things that you normally have to do tons of research on and understand what you're actually up against and make a decision. So the bar for trust is super high. You don't want to give people the wrong kind of information, because if you steer them wrong or it's kind of fuzzy, they actually have real life consequences. You could screw up the retirement plan or the kids can't go to the college that they expected, or they don't have the insurance they actually need. All these things are actually really terrible, and we don't want to do that. So it might be different if you have a different type of content that you're trying to produce. Not everything has to meet the same quality bar. I think that's super important. So if you know what your goal is, and what kind of content you actually want to produce, and what kind of business results you want to drive from that, that's how I would start screening people. So in our case, we knew that accuracy was super important. We knew that we needed people who understood complexity, and yet could make it highly conversational and accessible to normal people. So in that case, it makes sense for us to hire journalists. Because if you think about this, journalists essentially every day get thrown into things they know nothing about, have to make sense of it, and they have to make sense of it on deadline in a way that is understandable on average to a 7th grader. So those are elements that worked in our favor. I just knew what the hiring pool would need to look like to contribute the kind of content we needed. And in your case, I would start out the same way. I would look at the content you're trying to create and think about what is the ideal person. And it doesn't mean that you have to hire people from Columbia or whatever. Columbia is a very good journalism program. I respect it. I actually went to San Francisco State. I went there because I realized that in content, you don't actually need credentials. You either know how to do the job or you don't know how to do the job. And it's that simple. And how do you learn how to do the job? It's hands-on. It's not through a book or a program or somebody telling you how to do it really. You just do it over and over again. And so I looked at, to Sam's point, I looked at people's writing samples. I want to see the unedited wall writing
Well, even on a granular level, do you make people submit a sample before? Like, what's the even like the form look like when you apply for a job?
Yeah, so we get a lot of applications. What we look for initially is we require people to submit written, content of some sort. They can either, send something that's for work or related to work or college. It depends on, what their experience is. Some people know how to write, but they've never had a job writing. I don't care as long as I see the writing sample. That's super important. And if they apply and they won't submit a writing sample, I just delete them. Because if you fucking earn a living with writing and you can't write for your own good, then don't come to me.
Yeah, so that's funny, because everyone literally can write. We get so many applications of people saying like, "This sounds fun. I've always wanted a job doing this." It's like, no, that's like that's not how it works. But so you guys get the writing sample and then do a phone like.
Yeah, we get the first writing samples, we look at those, and we judge just preliminarily. Everything goes in their shooter. Most people don't actually fail that part. Because you look for people, when we're looking for people who write complexity with clarity. We're not looking for people who wrote music reviews, wrote about opinions or politics, that they're interested in or things like that. We're asking people to explain complexity to a normal person. So we're looking for examples like that. And in your case, I would look, in Sam's case, look for somebody who knows to write what they want to write. Ideally. So we look at that and then we do a phone screen. And the phone screen is really, are you saying you're not saying? Is there something really weird about you that we should do? And it's not meant to be a real document that way. It's just more initial fit.
And how long does that call?
It takes, depending on who used to do it and who does it now. So when I built a team from zero, I used to do 15 minutes. I did 15 minutes in a row for 4 hours with people. So I have these questions that drive that. Certain things that I want to understand about them. Now we have a recruiting team that does that and they're embedded with us and they're trained to ask the kind of questions we want. And so it could be a half an hour for them. It takes a little longer for them.
And last question for you, Maggie, is where you guys, I know you said you get hundreds of job applicants, but early on I knew that you said you had a raise because people didn't even know who you were. So where were you posting to get so many great job applicants?
Yeah, so this is important because when I joined from mainstream media, from journalism like CNN, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, people normally would apply. They already knew what you were before they applied. When I came to NerdWallet, I knew that the challenge was nobody ever heard of us. And why would somebody normal quit a perfectly good job to come and work at a startup they never heard of that had shitty content that was written before I showed up?
Does anyone else have that problem? Yeah.
So initially, you're building a brand and trying to tell a story about why should people come to you versus other people. If they're not going to make a lot of money, if they're going to write for the first time or whatever, what makes you different from other people? It's the differentiator as far as being an employer of choice. And it depends on what your levers are, but I would really look at whether it's your mission, your product, or things that people want to learn and stretch in.
And where for you, where were those places?
Yeah, so I knew, I had my own network, but none of my network was normally going to go put their jobs at CNN with full benefits and everything they got pushed to come work at a startup, which they assumed would fail. So even though we were pretty reasonably stable financially, I couldn't count on that. So I advertised in places like journalismjobs.com, and I did a lot of like cold outreach on LinkedIn. So a lot of my team initially came from cold outreach from journalismjobs.com, and then people on the aggregator sites would scrape journalismjobs.com. So I would get a mix of people as well.
How about you, Danny?
Yeah, I was gonna ask, how many people in here are like early stage? Just like there's you and a founder, you're a founder, and it's you and a founder. There's a couple. Most people are like middle. Okay, so I would say it really depends, because I would encourage. I think a lot of times with startups I've talked to in the past who are interested in building a content team, they immediately want to go out and hire a content person. And they ask me, what advice do you have for hiring someone? And I think content is something that can work for most businesses. I don't think it necessarily works for every business. As a pool like your biggest, to invest that much in an early stage, like go all in as that is a primary marketing channel. So my advice would be to scale into content, and what I did when I built the startup early is like I said, I started on my own, then I started hiring contractors. Most of the folks that I hired as contractors, some of them came, it's not most, but some came in as full-time employees later, gave me plenty of time to work with them and vet them, see how we work together. To me, it's like the writing's part of it. I would, like you said, the sanity check, there's another part of it. It's like not only how good is their writing, how fast can they write, how efficient are they? And so that gave me time to kind of see, okay, do they get it? Do we work well together? And it also gave time for the business to kind of scale up to the point that we were able to hire a full-time person. So those folks I reached out to and leverage their own networks. Some of them had their own personal blogs. And we do this now with InVision. When we go, so like I said, 70% of InVision's content comes in unsolicited, actually, just folks who want, they're building their own name, they're trying to build a personal brand or get a link back to their site, their agency or whatever in the bio, which is great. The problem there is that we can't control necessarily the SEO, what keywords are we targeting, is that exactly what things we want to be covering? So I go to supplement those articles, I go to places like Medium, find really kick-ass UX, product design writers who are already doing their own thing, I can already see they get it, they understand the industry, and then we reach out to them and say, hey, look, you're doing it for free on Medium, we will pay you to create some of that similar content for us. And the hope is that, with InVision especially, we're 100% distributed, so we start working together, we have an open spot open up for a content person on our team, it's like, boom, you're already doing this, come on in, we have a good working relationship, you understand us, we understand you.
And what rates do you pay people who you find on Medium?
It depends. I would say we pay competitively for the type of writing and online writing. If it's 1,000 word plus detailed, it's over $1,000 easy. If it's a quick little a quick article that would take a newsworthy post or something that may take somebody 15 minutes, or should take somebody 15 or 30 minutes to write, we'll pay a couple $100s for that. So it really we want to make sure we're investing in people. We're definitely not trying to make our operation like a content farm. We're trying to get experts, and you have to pay. We're willing to pay the appropriate rate. And everybody's different. What their needs are, what their time is, how big their network is. We kind of factor all that in whenever we decide on rates.
Great. And how about you? What's your hiring process?
For us, we're a writing company, and so I think that sample or that initial kind of look at someone's work, I think is really important. We have a high bar. We feel like what we put out there needs to represent what the product stands for. And so we look at people's portfolios. I also think there's something interesting in seeing what people decide to send you in their portfolio. I think that tells you something else. It touches on, do they know you as their audience? And I think that's kind of a helpful thing to see in that process as well. So looking at the portfolio, I think an initial screening, which sounds familiar with what some of these folks have mentioned, just to kind of see if there's that initial fit. Do you get it? Can we work together? Are you excited about the problems we're trying to solve in creating this kind of content? And then I think we do assign a homework assignment as well. I think it's nice for us, to see what this person is capable of and to kind of see some applied work. But I think it's also nice for the candidate as well. They get a chance to kind of try things on and see if this is the kind of work, the kind of writing that they're really interested in doing. So I think it's nice from both sides.
And where are most of your candidates coming from?
Yeah, I think something that's really interesting about our team and Grammarly in general is that, not all of us come from kind of traditional marketing backgrounds. And I think that's something that, gives us a little bit of a different perspective and makes us kind of a stronger, more diverse team. We have someone on the team who comes from work with the NFL, which is not something you might expect, with a content marketing team. We have folks who come from the education world. We do have people who come from traditional media. It's kind of across the board.
Okay.
So I think that's really helped us build out a strong team with diverse perspectives.
One thing I was going to say too on the contractor writing, guard your time on that. I would say 9 out of 10 contractors folks that I find and I try to get on, 9 out of 10 are never, they're super into it and they're never going to write again. So I try to make that process, that's another way to vet people too, quickly. It's say, you agree on a price, oh yeah, I'm really into it. Okay, I'll pitch you some ideas to get you started and then you'll never hear again. So that's another thing I would say, guard your time there. And if you're hiring contractors, I would make that process actually shorter and easier simply because most of them are not going to pull through.
Yeah, to Lindsay's point about, giving people a chance to try, the kind of writing that you're doing. That's part of the reason we want to do the writing sample. We want to see the raw work unedited because we can't trust that whatever they sent us initially wasn't edited. The other thing is that whatever they wrote before isn't what we necessarily want them to write. And so what we're looking for isn't that they hit it right on the target, but we look at their work, how close it gets from a scale of 1 to 10, and then we look at what the gaps are and whether they're reasonably manageable, and then we go back and give them feedback. And if they are reticent at that point about taking feedback, then they go in the shooter, because we don't want to work with people that we have to push uphill. They either are bored or not, and we don't want to try to convert people.
And when we first started, I would pay people to do these auditions, and then I realized that if we can make it last, if I know that it only takes about an hour of work, that we actually didn't need to pay people, and it helped big time because then we could have 10 people a week going through this cycle. Do you guys, any of you pay or do not pay for your writing auditions?
So when we first started, because the team was non-existent, I actually paid people because I needed the real copy to use. So in that case, if I was going to publish anything, I pay people because I think it's exploitative to take people's work and publish it without paying them. I don't want to devalue the industry that I'm in. So that's why we pay people. It wasn't a lot of money. They knew they were essentially auditioning for the work. But now we don't, and we don't publish that work, and we explain it's only going to take roughly about an hour, 2 hours or so.
That's the same for us. I think because we don't publish the work, we don't pay people for that exercise. I think we try to pick assignments that are more for exploration. Thank you. So similar, we don't pay for that either.
And you kind of do contracting stuff.
Yeah, it's like a hybrid. I mean, if someone's coming, if we have a full-time role and like I said, most of the time, hopefully, these folks are already vetted. We've already worked with them for potentially months. But we have hired folks who've done kind of, we call a challenge. Actually, almost everyone in InVision on the marketing team, at least when they come in, is if you make it kind of to the third interview step, you're assigned a challenge. That's part of the job interview process. Again, not published, but gives an idea of validates their work.
So we'll take questions in a few minutes. Is that okay if we hold that for? Sure. So you have a question, you go first, and so if you guys have a question, start thinking about it. And I think there's a microphone going around, but we'll figure it out. So one big thing that I learned going into this space was at first it would take me a week to write something. It would take me a week to come up and write something, and then I saw that our competitors, which is a little bit different, it's not content marketing, but it's just the content space, we're able to produce hundreds and then sometimes thousands of pieces of content a week, and for some companies, thousands a day. And I began thinking, what's possible? What can I possibly do? And so we made the mistake of just churning out a ton of content. One person could do, I know Gawker, they'll do 10 articles a day. And that's not right for everyone, but it's interesting to see what's possible. I would argue that's not right for anyone, but it's interesting to see what's possible. And so I know that was cool for me to learn that. So in terms of output, what are your guys' like, what's reasonable for output? Because whenever I tell someone, when they're like, yeah, we do like one post a week or one post a month, and I'm like, you could, if you had someone full time, you could really crank that up real hard, like once you get the process. But it was really interesting to see, to learn from you guys. I know, Maggie, I want to do a lot, to see like what's possible. So can you guys tell me what some of your outputs are, as well as how you're tracking if a piece of content is successful or if that output is successful? Do you want to start?
Sure. So for us, our publishing cadence is we publish once a day on our blog. And then when it comes to our social channels, that can vary anywhere from 1 to 2 posts per day on things like Instagram or LinkedIn, up to like 5 to 8 times a day on channels like Facebook. So that's our cadence. I will say that we are testing that all the time, looking at whether our traffic levels are staying consistent when we do more posts than that or fewer posts than that. So I think that's really what it's about for us, is making sure that we have that consistency and that we're not losing engagement or traffic.
So with 6 writers, that's 1 article a week per writer, roughly.
So we outsource most of our writing. We have a freelance writing team.
Yeah.
And we're on like a 2 to 3 week kind of rolling cycle with them. So I think it works out to, it's a lot of writing, but I think it works out to anywhere from like 1 to 2 posts per week.
Per
writer.
freelancer.
Yeah.
Got it. Cool. Maggie, how about you? Because you've seen that CNN and Washington Post where someone can do 1 or 2 a day, I imagine, too.
Yeah, some news outlets do like 5 or 6 a day
Per writer.
Per writer. So I think that's actually a recipe for volume and not quality, and I believe in quality. And maybe volume works for some people. They just think, take more swings at the bat. I don't know. There must be a reason why they do that. But for us, it wouldn't work because we're trying to help people make decisions in a sound way. And so we don't have a quota system at all for the kind of content we do. On average, our writers could theoretically do 2 or 3 a week, and that's if we give them reasonable time to do quality. But a lot of that is research and reporting. It's not in the writing, right? So if you have people who actually need to know video, you're not going to be able to have some guy drop in, parachute in, and learn how video and write a story about video. For our customer like yours, where they'd actually see through that. Right? For us, that's super important that we're actually meeting our users' needs. So volume-wise, like I said, they could write 2 or 3 a week, but that's not something we shoot for. And we also look at the complexity of what they're trying to write. There are some things like you were talking about, some things take less time, and some things just take more time by their nature. But on average, a year, we could probably produce, if we wanted to, 1,000 a year.
1,000 a year with how
We
many?
just turned it on. But the thing is, the main thing is, we don't actually do that. I'm just giving you the numbers because you asked for them. But just so you know, we spend a lot of time optimizing our content. So we spend about 50% of the time actually optimizing and doing other things, training and getting people better and better, whether it's that writing, doing research, doing interviews, doing SEO, whatever it is. We invest in people. But that's because our business is long-term and we're scaling. So if you think about it, that's different from maybe individual companies' needs.
And you want to?
Yeah, real quick. I mean, I think a lot. I've actually run this test before for the site I worked on quite a bit in the past. For 2 years, we did 2 posts a day, and we saw traffic patterns, and we're like, what if we did 3 posts a day? Wow, we can, we'll be able to make our traffic go so much further. But
3 posts per person?
3 posts per, let's say, per blog. So I was less focused on per person. Some people would take, I used to run a content team with writers that was about 6 or 7. Some people would do 2 long posts a week. Some people would do 3 short posts a day. It's like, I wasn't really focused on the numbers so much. Like total output, let's say we did 14 posts a week or 10 posts a week on the blog. We bumped it up to 15 posts a week on the blog, and we saw a 10% increase in traffic. That's so at some point I feel like for every site, for every company, there's diminishing returns. Like, I think it depends how big your market is, how big your keywords that you're targeting are, that kind of thing. But for us, we just, 2 posts a day felt right. It felt like the site was alive. I feel like it's important to have enough stuff on there that if you're trying to build daily traffic when people come back, that they're seeing fresh things every day on the site if you want to build that daily. My goal for InVision's blog and other blogs I've worked on in the past is that every morning, if you're a video person for Premium Beats blog or a product design person for InVision, you'll wake up and check CNN, you check whatever, Pitchfork, you check whatever you check, and then you check InVision's blog to get the news for the day, and you should see something fresh. So at least every day, 2 posts. That was our minimum, but we didn't see any really significant increase when we bumped it up.
Got it.
I'd be interested in how many people actually are pursuing distribution through SEO as a primary driver.
Yeah, so you want to ask the question one more time? Just
Yeah, how many of you guys are actually using SEO as your primary distribution channel, or want to? Okay.
as opposed to social or direct traffic. Or,
Yeah. So why don't we go through, like, direct traffic, your number one way of distribution? Okay. Social? Okay. So there's a lot of you who have not raised your hands. What are you doing?
Or maybe they're figuring it out.
Okay, because this is really important. Your
Yeah.
distribution channel, determines a lot of how you're spending your time and how much you make. So for us, we want to own SEO for all our areas of personal finance. And in that case, it's not necessarily volume that drives, it's quality. And so that's why we determined that quality is super important, not just our space, but SEO in general is our tool to get in front of people over and over again. So in his case, when he's talking about people wake up and check InVision's blog, it makes sense because it's a site where you would want people to drive that habit. In our case, we don't expect people to come to our site every day. They don't need fresh content every day because you don't face a question about how do I get a mortgage every single day of my life. That would be crazy if they came back every day.
Yeah, and we only have so much time, but one thing that is, I think, incredibly important that people don't always think about is when you know what you want to write about, it's actually most important to first think, where is this going to have legs at? How are people going to find this? Because it's like at times, what's the point of creating if no one's going to get value and see it? And so you first have to think, is this going to get popular on social, on search, on like a Reddit type of site, or where? And then you develop your tactics from that.
We actually have like a mix. We've worked out like a content mix. A lot of the stuff that does really well on SEO just doesn't do well on social. I mean, things that when we think about SEO, I mean, for digital product design, it's a lot of how-to tutorials. If people search, what phrase, what long tail search term are they going to use to find this? They're actually looking to do something, whereas social is way more passive. So, on social, a lot of times we'll create things that are really quick, a lot quicker post, inspiration, that kind of thing, that typically do really well on social. They die within a month because there's no SEO, there's no long-term evergreen driver to it, but it's worthwhile for us to do it because it keeps things fresh, those are usually more fun, and they usually don't take a lot of time to create.
Great. Let's get some questions. We'll try to do kind of a rapid fire for some of the questions, just to keep everyone in check for time. I know you had to raise your hand first.
This question can be for each of you, if it applies, but Sam, I know you mentioned the voice of the hustle. How did you decide what the voice was going to be? Was it just natural, you sat down one day and wrote something and that was the voice, or did you A/B testing and what people liked and feedback and changed it? How did you decide what that was going to sound like?
Yeah, I'll answer for us. When we started, it was me and my partner John. We were writing for our friends, and so it was people like us. So we decided to write like people like us, and then we realized that we were being too masculine and too bro-y with our voice, and that was extremely limiting. And so we purposely toned that down. And then John eventually made like a guide, like a voice guide, and we found people who were talented and then trained them through that voice. But at first it was people who we liked, or people who were like us, young men, and then we purposely said all right, let's try to appeal to way more people, and so we purposely toned down some of the stuff we were talking about. Do you guys have any opinions on voice?
Yeah,
And we'll try to keep each response 30 seconds.
So for us, our voice really came from our brand identity that we pulled together from our brand guidelines. That's something that the entire company has kind of gone through and has really internalized at this point. So from that informed our editorial guidelines, and then we have actually an in-house editor that looks at everything before it goes out to make sure that we're sticking to those editorial guidelines and that we're representing the brands as we want to be.
Cool. Yeah, it's similar to us. I mean, we have a brand voice that we use on social, and we use in like outbound emails, that kind of thing. I do think our blog, which is a big traffic driver for us, like I said, we have probably 70% of what we publish is unsolicited. It comes from folks out in the industry that kind of want to elevate themselves as like a knowledge expert in the space. And a lot of times we let their photos on the site with their name underneath their on their post. A lot of times we should let them keep their voice as long as it's not like in conflict with ours. But I think that's kind of important. That's a lot of the reason why folks are, just give to us and give to the site to share with the community, is that they get to kind of elevate themselves and use their own voices, basically.
Yeah, our voice is vanilla on purpose, because if people are SEOing into it, we don't actually know who they are. So we're just trying to solve a problem in a way that's trustworthy. As we're getting more and more established and developing a brand, we're migrating to more what we consider a NerdWallet voice. But it's not something that we immediately decided to do because it wouldn't have made sense for our business.
Yeah, I think in the same way that you have like an asset, or you have like a brand guide for for graphic designers, like this color, these colors, this is our scheme. I know we did the same with even phrases and words. So how we say numbers to even what cuss words we're not going to use and what's acceptable.
It's like voice and tone document.
Yeah. It's like a voice and tone document. And if you Google Vice content guide maybe, or Business Insider, I forget, what are they called? What are those guys called? There's an industry term. Anyway, you can find a lot of these editorial guides for a lot of media companies.
Yeah, I don't know if you're talking about style guide.
Style guides, sorry, yeah, style guide. All right, how about you in the back?
I'd love to hear how each of you generally plans content. What's your process for that? Given if I go to so many distribution channels, who are you writing for? How often are you doing that? How often are you reevaluating that? I think that's probably the most complex thing from my perspective.
Maggie, do you want to start? And keep in mind, we're trying to keep we're doing good with response time.
Yeah, so we have 13 businesses, 13 verticals in our company. So each of those verticals decides. So you just step back and decide, okay, what are we trying to accomplish long-term, short-term, medium, etc. And figure that out and make your strategy based on that. Because if you're just a short-term thinking company and you just might need to pivot, you might actually not want to create a whole ass strategy. You might actually want to just gatekeep at a certain point and figure out, okay, I'm going to test certain things, this is our hypothesis, and go from there. I would not spend a lot of time trying to create a master strategy unless you know for sure this thing is going to work.
What tools do you use to decide your strategy? Would it help if you had specific even tools as to what you use to measure search traffic, or what's to see what's popular on social? Do you use any tools?
Yeah, so it depends on you guys, but Google Analytics is available to everybody, right? So that's one thing I would start off with. For us, internally, we have a data team, so we build our own dashboards and tools, and we use Tableau and SQL and things like that. We also use things that are heat mapping to see where people drop off and focus and et cetera. But I would not recommend tools universally to everybody because it really depends what you're trying to do and what you're trying to measure.
Cool. Yeah. One tool that we don't use, but I've used in the past, is CoSchedule, and they've kind of built a pretty nice, specifically for content marketing, especially if you use WordPress, it ties in. So that's what I recommend. We use Sprout Social to kind of monitor our social accounts and to post there. I would say that's the hardest part of my job is alignment. I mean, between social and we've got video on content team, and then the blog, and then everything else going on, especially as a fully remote team, it kind of exacerbates the complexity of that. So there's not a silver bullet. We're kind of struggling with this all the time. I think in general we try to look about a month out. On bigger things, that require more dependencies and design and development potentially, we may be looking 3 months out. But we're not planning any further than that usually.
And what about you in terms of coming up with ideas and strategizing on what you want to accomplish?
Yeah, for us, we do have a content strategy that we revisit on a yearly basis, and for us, that's really driven by our target audience, and that helps us kind of set a high-level narrative that we want to commit to over the course of the year. And then to make that a little bit more actionable for the team, we invested in a team-wide workshop to come up with smaller pillars to help with the ideation process, just to kind of give it a little bit more structure. And that seems to be working well for us. I think within that, our content marketing manager is always curating and building a pipeline of ideas that can tie back to those pillars. And then I think it's a matter of testing over time, just seeing what's working, what's not. And I would agree with Maggie that I wouldn't recommend tools universally, but for us, we use Google Analytics. That's kind of our bread and butter tool for traffic and time on page, things like that. We also use TrackMaven to get a sense for the social perspective and how that's integrating with our content hub, which is the blog. And then we also use some tools that help us with heat maps and just kind of seeing on-page behavior.
So we'll do maybe 2 or 3 more questions. How about you?
Yeah. Hey, thanks for the panel, by the way. Would you recommend using contributor networks or reaching out to a publication, especially if you're a young publication, and contributing to their platform, and then maybe like either not necessarily linking back to yours, but just raising awareness about your platform, so then maybe like in the future they'll come over to your blog or something like that?
So the question is, if a contributor system versus
Or if you as staff providers are contributing to other publications, at the same time you also have your own, and then there will be a crossover at some point.
Like guest posting, essentially?
Yeah.
I mean,
So one thing I've done in the past is when we create a piece of content, we're really careful about duplicate content issues with Google and SEO implications and all that. So, certainly we don't, like if we publish something on InVision's blog, we want that to be exclusive to InVision's blog. And that's just for SEO. But sometimes especially if we're creating something in-house and we're publishing with our in-house content team, sometimes we can take some of that content and maybe pull part of it out and then rewrite it or repurpose it. And then, reach out. And certainly, I think backlinking is still a thing when it can be done with relevancy and actually adding value above and beyond what is included in our own post. So sometimes we'll pivot just off the post just slightly, write something, maybe a truncated version of that for another site, and then obviously we'll ask them to link back to the original piece of content.
Great. We'll do 2 more questions, and then we'll bring us right to 9:30. And these folks are going to hang out, I think, for a little while, right? So if you guys have more questions, how about in front?
Yeah, so you guys talked a lot about blog posts and social posts. What other content formats have you found a lot of success in there, especially gaming content?
So the question is, what other types of content, probably other than written or...
other than blog posts and social.
So blog posts, and what other type of content works well for achieving what your desirable outcome is?
Yeah, it depends on what your business is, but for us, we have not gone fully into video, and we're starting to do more and more of that. One of the things that we do is tools, so calculators. That doesn't require necessarily any kind of real content other than explaining what the hell the calculator is and what the results are.
Yeah, similar to that, I've had success in the past with freebies. For InVision, product design, UI kits is a big thing that people like to download. I mean, there's an initial cost. You can get an external company or agency to create some of that content for you. When I worked with a production music company, we used to give away sound effects packs and things that were kind of ancillary to our core product offering, which would drive a lot of traffic. Those things get a lot of shares, especially if they're not gated, but obviously if you're not gating them, be sure to put them in a remarketing bucket or something. But yeah, those have always been good. With InVision, we also do e-courses and webinars, which have very degrees of success.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with Maggie that video is something that we're starting to get into a lot more as well.
And I'm sure everyone here has seen a Grammarly YouTube ad. I know I get targeted all the time.
So in addition to video, something else that I think is maybe a little bit unique to Grammarly and is why we've decided to invest in this is things that we call data studies. So looking at writing trends and things that we can offer that are valuable and actionable for our readership, and creating some interesting pieces representing that visually and kind of wrapping that up in a blog post or something else.
Yeah, this might work for InVision or other places, maybe Grammarly, that you can offer expert advice. So we get interviews, people do media interviews with us, because we have people who are experts in financial areas. And I'm sure if they needed a grammar wizard or something, they could ask. But you want to make sure that you're in that space and people know that you're a thought leader or something to contribute. Cool.
So we'll do one last question. You seem pretty eager to hopefully it's a good question.
I guess what is your most successful piece of content in recent memory? Why was it successful?
Good question. So the question is, what was your most successful piece of content in recent memory, and why? Why do you think it was successful? That's a great question.
For us, we've seen a lot of success recently with email-based content. So we've had a couple really successful posts, one of which, for example, talked about alternative ways to say, I hope you're doing well in an email, which we've all seen that in an email. I think that part of the reason why that was so successful is, for us, there are people who identify as writers, and then there are people who don't. And email is kind of this nice sweet spot where everybody emails. It's a topic that everyone can relate to. So we're able to kind of connect with both sides of that. And then I think the other reason why it was successful is we offered real practical advice. We gave alternative phrasing, things that people might want to consider using, and we found that to be very effective.
How big did it get? How do you define success?
Yeah, so our traffic benchmarks were blown out of the water, like multiple orders of magnitude difference.
And where do they get popular at?
We see traffic to our blog, obviously, but we saw a lot of pickup on our social channels, Facebook especially.
How about you, Danny?
Yeah, this one I can't take full credit for because it started before I came into InVision, but they went really all in on basically a feature-length documentary. I don't know if anyone here has seen it, Design Disruptors. No? You can Google Design Disruptors and go to that site. But basically, there was basically a feature-length, hour-ish long documentary on design and the importance of digital product design, what it means for the future. And it wasn't InVision product-based, like most of our content that does really well and is our audience reacts well to. It's not about our product, it's about the industry that they care about. And, interviews, we had interviews with leaders of Twitter and HubSpot and Uber and folks at Google Ventures, and what does digital product design, what are the implications for this and the struggles and the wins. So that was a big one, and the way we utilized it, we had a couple different ways. We actually had we built kind of a community screenings thing around it where a lot of companies would want to show this to their design teams in-house, which was a great sales opportunity for us as well. Send InVision swag their way and help them with their screenings. So we had screenings all over the world, companies like IBM, and they wanted to kind of empower their design teams with the voices of the leaders of design today. So that was a big one for us, and certainly not an inexpensive content play, but something I think that paid off and was worthwhile.
You, Maggie.
Yeah, so our most successful piece of content actually was about what do you do if you win Powerball, and it was this jackass going on, and it got shit tons of traffic. It got traffic through us, it got traffic through social, it got traffic through all our partners, etc. But I want to give a takeaway on this. I think about content in general, and I was at CNN, and the goal is to get as many eyeballs as you can on one piece of content. So you think about what is the universe of the people that possibly could read that. Want to read that piece, right? And as you get more and more niche, you're actually giving away more and more of your audience. And that might be fine as long as you know why you're giving it away. In our case, we do it because we want conversion. So it's quantity versus quality. So quality for us is different. So success is determined by what you're actually trying to drive. If we're just trying to drive eyeballs, we know how to do that. If we're trying to drive conversions, there's a different way we're doing that. And that's successful for our business in particular. It might be different for your business. But I think that the general takeaway is, think about quality versus quantity.
And I'll give one of ours, but in terms of eyeballs, one thing that we did recently, and it wasn't planned, is someone, I think it was a co-founder, wrote an article about how Shaq, the basketball player, makes a surprisingly amount of income from investing. He was he owns a whole bunch of Starbucks and Pizza Huts and stuff like that. And it got to the front page of Reddit, which drove millions of views. But also, totally on accident, he was on Jimmy Fallon's show, and he talked about how he was an investor, and it was this huge uptick. And so all these people who are watching the Jimmy Fallon Google Shaq investor, and we just happened to come up totally on accident, and it worked out wonderfully in terms of eyeballs. Anyway, huge thanks for you guys coming. Well, you guys will hang out for a little bit.
Actually, I have an open content strategist position on my team, and so I'll use this as an opportunity for a very targeted group of people. If you're interested, please come and chat with me after.
Yeah, I forgot to add, so are we, so we're hiring some copywriters, but
Well, no strain. I'll jump on. We are looking to grow our team as well, so.
well, huge thanks for coming. We'll hang out. Thank you for Runaway and Algorithm Coffee. more of these. So hopefully we'll see y'all on soon. So thank you.